Along the Santa Fe Trail.
God bless America. God bless you all. That's life.
Georgia.
I said, Georgia.
Oh, the humanity.
You load 16 tons.
Gotta jump down, spin around and pick a bale of cotton. Gotta jump down, spin around and pick a bale of day.
All day, all night, Marianne.
And then I made him an offer he couldn't refuse.
Time now for spinning my dad's vinyl. Here, with all his skips, scratches, and pops, is my dad, Frank Vaccarello.
Thanks, sweetie, and thank you for tuning into episode 220 of Spinning My Dad's Vinyl. Gee, imagine that. Another album featuring a trumpet player from my dad's collection, and a trumpet player we've heard from before. This time, we get to hear some great ragtime from him. This artist not only fronted his own band, but got his pedigree through some of the best big bands in history. So, get ready to hear a musician who had a movie made about his life in Volume 220, Red Hot Pennies. It's Red Nichols and his famous Pennies with Louisiana, written by Andy Rezoff, J.C. Johnson, and Bob Schaefer. Okay, why this record for this episode? Because I really like this trumpet player. I wish my dad had more of his records. He can switch gears with the best of them. Some hard Dixieland, like the first time we heard him, and ragtime, like you're going to hear on this episode, but able to play so smooth and soft when needed. It's no wonder he was a favorite of some big-name, big band leaders. But before we move on, let me introduce you to Red Nichols and his famous pennies. Wayne Songer on alto saxophone, Joe Blizzard Gizzard Rushton on bass saxophone, Jack Ryan on bass, Billy Wood and Heine Bow on clarinet, Raleigh Culver on drums, George Van Epps on guitar, Bobby Hammock on piano, Al Stevenson on rhythm piano, Abe Lincoln, yep, that's what it says here, King Jackson and Mo Schneider on trombone, and the trumpet and the leader of the orchestra, of course, Red Nichols. And I really liked their treatment on this next one. Among my dad's favorite tunes, which is why it starts and ends every episode. Marching with the Saints, also known as The Saints Go Marching In, which of course is a traditional song that we don't really know who wrote. Okay, now let me tell you about my dad's vinyl I am spinning for this episode. Red Nichols and his famous pennies, Hot Pennies, on the Capitol Records label number T775. It's a vinyl LP album format, was released in 1956. Its genre is jazz and its style is ragtime. It was recorded in Capitol Tower on September 7th and 10th, 1956, and we'll hear 6 of the 10 songs on this album. Now, the liner notes are not long, but I'm still only going to read a portion of them. Loring Nichols needs few explanatory notes to accompany his records. For 30 years, Red has been recording the music he loves most dearly, American jazz. He was a famous leader at 16, and at 19 was the trumpet-tooting boss of men like Glenn Miller, Tommy and Jimmy Dorsey, Benny Goodman, Artie Shaw, and other hot virtuosi of eminence. Nichols' famed 5 pennies waxed scores of hit records. His orchestras played in the pits of a dozen memorable Broadway musical shows and radio broadcasts throughout the 1920s and 1930s, further established the skilled little horn man from Ogden, Utah, as an international favorite. Red's abrupt decision in 1942 to abandon music, take a welding job in the Oakland shipyards, and remain under the same roof every night with his polio-stricken daughter is a story that is perhaps without equal in American popular music. In Hot Pennies, Red is showcased in a long play album recorded in true hi-fi for the first time in his career. The tunes are all particularly identified with Nichols, and his bright pennies have been for years, but essentially this is a Nichols package dominated by his punching trumpet and inspiring personality. Capitol is privileged to present Loring Nichols and his Hot Pennies in hi-fi. It's a far cry from the 20s. Okay, let's see what prices this record is being sold at on Discogs.com. $20 for a high, 49-cent low, for a $4.70 average, and a $3 median. It was last sold on February 9th, 2024, for that low of what was actually 45 cents euro. My dad's record is in pretty good condition. Not much hiss between the tracks, which seems to have a pretty clean sound themselves. The surface is pretty clean, only a few markings on it as if the album had been played plenty. The cover is in poor condition. Lots of wear in the printed artwork on both sides. The top near the opening slot has a big slit and the bottom opposite has a small slit. The back cover has an almost unseen number penciled in the upper right corner. I can't tell if it's $3.98 as a price or a date of March 1998. Can't really be sure, but unlike any I've seen from my dad's collection so far. And there is no address label on the front. So I'll value my dad's vinyl at 50 cents. Next up, a tune many of you should be familiar with, and it's a great rendition at that. Maple Leaf Rag, written by Scott Joplin. Now let's learn a little about the featured artist. Red Nichols was an American trumpet player and bandleader born Ernest Loring Nichols on May 8, 1905 in Ogden, Utah. He showed musical talent from a young age and learned to play the cornet from his father. In the 1920s, Nichols moved to New York City, where he became a popular musician during the Jazz Age. He played with some of the biggest names in jazz, including Benny Goodman and Jimmy Dorsey, and led his own group called Red Nichols and his Five Pennies. The band recorded hundreds of songs and became known for their lively, upbeat style and skilled musicianship. Red Nichols was known for his bright, clear trumpet sound and his ability to play both fast, catchy tunes and slower, more emotional songs. His most famous recordings include songs like Ida, Sweet as Apple Cider, and Battle Hymn of the Republic. Even though the swing era of the 1930s made his music less popular, Nichols kept performing for decades, even playing in small clubs to support his family. In the 1950s, his life story was turned into a movie called The Five Pennies, starring Danny Kaye. His contributions to jazz and his dedication to his craft are still remembered today. In 1986, Red Nichols was inducted into the Big Band and Jazz Hall of Fame. He passed away on June 28, 1965. Red Nichols was 60 years old. And now, what better time to play the blues? Blues at Midnight, written by Ivory Joe Hunter. Time now for this episode's interesting side note, and it has to do with that break during the war. Did you think I was going to skip over that story? In 1942, Red Nichols made a tough decision to leave the music business and take a job as a welder in the Oakland shipyards in California. World War II was going on, and shipyard jobs were important for building and repairing ships. But Red had a more personal reason for making this change. His daughter Dorothy had been diagnosed with polio, a serious illness that left her partially paralyzed. Red wanted to be there to support her and his family, so he gave up performing and touring to stay home every night. During this time, Red worked long hours at the shipyards, but being home every night meant a lot to him. He was determined to take care of his daughter and help her get through her illness. Even though it was hard to leave the music world behind, Red knew his family needed him more than ever. His decision showed just how much he loved his daughter and how committed he was to his family. After the war ended, Red slowly returned to performing and rebuilding his music career. His time away from music made him appreciate it even more, and he was eventually able to form a new version of his band, the Five Pennies. Though his career took a hit during those years, his dedication to his daughter never wavered, and he managed to find his way back to the stage. Ah, the father's love for a daughter. I know it all too well. Next up, this is not exactly the round we used to sing in elementary school music class. kind of has the softest touch on this entire album. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. I don't remember this album cover from my growing up days in the house. I really think, according to the clues, my dad bought this well after I left home. The cover features a photo of Red blowing into his horn on a red background. The album title, Hot Pennies, and Red's name are in yellow capital letters. Also embedded in the background are several pennies. Of course, wheatback. The back cover has a small area of some avant-garde artwork near a photo of Red behind a director's podium. He's looking over the score and pointing to someone, presumably in the orchestra, that he is leading. And as usual, I left some pretty good tunes on the record, and I just can't get to them all. But really, great music from this record. So, let's get ready to say farewell. Another tune that should be familiar to you, Farewell Blues, written by Elmer Schobel, Leon Rapolo, and Paul Maris. And there you have selections from a pretty popular trumpet player. So thanks for tuning into Volume 220 Red Hot Pennies however you did. If you want more information about this show, head over to spinningmydadsvinyl.com. I'll be back next week with all my skips, scratches, and pops for Volume 221, Every Twist You Take. Until then, go with the flow, my friends.